There are hundreds of bosses in the Soul series, but have you ever wondered which one is truly the worst? Don't worry, because today I will be answering that for you. So in this video I'll be going over 15 of the worst Soulsborne bosses in my opinion and rank them amongst each other to see which is truly the worst. Again, in my opinion, this is not an objective ranking. Also, like and subscribe if you want to help the channel out. If you don't, then that's still cool with me. But without wasting any more of your time, let's get to the list. At number 15 we have the true King Alond. You see, when I'm doing the ranking for these videos, I usually look out for 4 main aspects of what makes a good boss: visuals, combat flow, challenge / balance, and story significance. Most of the best bosses in the Soul series and other video games outside the franchise have bosses that follow at least 2 of these core aspects, the combat flow being the most important one. However, it's sad to say that True King has only one of these factors, and that's story. The lore behind this guy is great and all, but everything else about him sucks. The visuals, sure, the arena is a bit unique, and the fact that we're fighting him inside of an old one is pretty sick, but his actual design itself is just really boring. I mean, it's just a mutated looking slug man. There's nothing interesting. Okay, that's a lie, because obviously in the back of my mind I was questioning what the hell happened to this guy, but at the same time, in terms of the fight itself, the design is just boring and kinda lame, but that goes for the combat flow as well. I mean, bro can barely swing his sword to save his life, plus he's extremely slow. In terms of challenge and balance, he provides 0 challenge, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, as a boss doesn't have to be hard to be fun, but fighting him is just really boring. Again, the only good thing about this fight is the lore. However, I'm not going to be too hard on him because, one, in terms of story, I like the fact that we finally get to see the actual King Alond, except in this pitiful form. It kinda symbolizes his fall from grace, but apart from that, the fight still sucks, but hey, at least it doesn't overstay its welcome. Reaching the Chained Ogre for the first time was somewhat cool and interesting, as he is chained up possibly by the 3 soldiers before him, and if you eavesdrop on them, they will reveal that his weakness is fire, and when you approach him and start attacking, that's when he breaks free. This is a real simple but cool build up. Now, the fight itself is genuinely bad. He lacks one of the main core aspects, and that's combat flow. You see, it's obvious that Sekiro's main gameplay style is all about deflections. Waiting for the enemy to attack, and at the right moment you parry, building up the posture meter until they are ready for a takedown. Most of the encounters in the game are like this, but this guy is one of the few exceptions. You see, instead of deflecting being the main way to defeat him, most people, including myself, find that the best strategy is to do the old hit and run, because for some reason this thing has some of the weirdest moveset in the game despite them being relatively simple kicks and grabs. It's not worth it to deflect him at all, as he's gonna do an insane amount of posture damage to you. And pretty often he will do a grab attack that for some reason has a damn vortex around it, as even if you're 2 inches away from him, he will still grab you and wipe out your health bar in 1 hit. So doing the dash and hit method works best because you're more likely to avoid that. Also, sometimes he will just yeet you over the cliff, sometimes insta killing you. As you can see, the combat flow here sucks, as he feels like a Dark Souls or a Bloodborne boss that got placed in the game. He's just not super fun to fight, period. So it might seem a bit weird to put the armored spider here, but just hear me out. While there are definitely worse fights in the series, it's just a giant spider boss with a gimmick. I swear, spiders have to be some of the most boring enemy types in media. Like bro, a spider? You couldn't come up with something else, like another cool ass arachnid like a centipede, or give us a cool insect boss like a beetle, mantis, or a ladybug? Something really different but interesting instead of a damn spider. Now, despite me shitting on the fact that, well, it's a spider, I still give the design of this thing a 7 or 8 because, I mean, it looks really cool, I guess. So in terms of visuals, it gets a check. However, the fight itself is rather boring. It still fits the combat flow of the game, as nothing about it insults the game's mechanics, but it's just a boring fight. Hit its face a couple times, dodge its web blast, run to the entrance when the ground is filled with oil, dodge the web attacks, hit its face, rinse and repeat. You see what I mean? The fight is just very mid. But again, as I mentioned before, there are way worse bosses on this list, and it doesn't overstay its welcome, unlike the next boss. Fire Giant is another boss where I think that combat flow ruins it, because in terms of visuals, he's a spectacle, especially with his various flame abilities. His lore is also great, as all the Fire Giants except for him were killed off by Marika's Golden Army, making him the last of his kind. and he was forever cursed to tend the flame of the fell god. But again, the combat flow is just terrible. You see, the fire giant fight plays out like this. In the first phase, you have to target his injured leg, while also dodging his various shield slam and him rolling around the arena. After that, one of the coolest cutscenes play out, and now he's missing that leg. However, because of this, his fingers are now his main weak spot. Now you might think that this is okay, since all you have to do is just focus on his, his hands, or his fingers in this case. Well, you see, you're right and wrong. Sure, you get better damage focusing on his fingers, but it is way more riskier, and in my opinion, just not worth it, as he keeps moving them around, which means you're barely gonna get hits in, and he never stays still, because just like the first phase, he's always rolling around, so you have to chase him most of the times. So the obvious best answer is to just focus on his leg stump and kill him that way. Sure, you're not going to do a lot of damage and you're going to be there for a while, but it's the best way. So overall, the fight is just very drawn out and boring, as the combat flow is just not that great due to how unfun it is to keep chasing after him, and his obvious weak spots are just hard to get hits in. The Maneaters have a very cool looking arena. I really like the cosmic horror vibes going on, but despite the arena looking cool, it's one of the main things I hate about the fight itself, as you can get knocked off pretty easily, and the run back to these guys is really long. The fight itself is also pretty jank at times and feels a bit unpolished, as the Maneaters will do an animation and stop midway like they're being reset or something. While the fight itself isn't too bad, having to fight two of these guys at the same time on this really narrow bridge genuinely suck. Maiden Estraya is another boss that gets a check for interesting lore and story significance, but has nothing else going for it. The fight takes place in a cramped spot, and the guy that protects her have the weirdest aggro I've ever seen in a video game, as for some reason he won't leave this spot at all, even though he's supposed to protect her. I know it's basically the game trying to tell you that he's actually just, trying to tell us to go away, but they could have at least made him an actual NPC fight and not having magneted to this narrow pathway. But yeah, you can easily cheese this guy with backstabs. Now the only other thing he has going for him is that he hits like a truck. But hey, this is Demon Souls, so you probably have over 100 weed grass in your inventory. But the funniest part about this fight is after you defeat him, you technically still have to go down and kill Maiden Estraya, as she's the actual boss. But instead, if you talk to her, she just does the job for you and offs herself there, which is sad when you know the lore, but pretty funny in gameplay. The only thing you have to worry about after defeating Vinland is the poison that surrounds Estraya. But hey, just know that after you defeat Vinland, you basically won the fight, so just skip the dialogue and you're pretty much good. But yeah, this boss encounter is pretty boring and kinda janky if we're talking about Vinland's part, but hey, at least the story is good. The Capra Demon, one of the most insufferable bosses in FromSoft history. But you know the weirdest thing about it? I've never really struggled with the fight itself. It's the camera that I and a lot of people struggled with the most. And the reason why I call this encounter insufferable is because it's just a multi-enemy boss placed in a small cramped area. Like, okay, cool, if you wanted to place 3 enemies in an area and call it a boss fight, go ahead. But at least choose 3 enemies that complement each other and also not put them in a cramped, tight area. You see, the Capra Demon is very fast and aggressive, and so are his dogs, so putting them in an alleyway just feels a bit disrespectful towards the player. But yeah, this encounter sucks, and these 2 dogs can go rot in hell. Rom, you arachnid piece of shit. You see, Rom's lore is actually really interesting, as she was once a human scholar who ascended to be a great one and got transformed into this. I'm pretty sure the story goes deeper than that, but even on the surface level, it's interesting enough. However, the fight itself is genuinely awful. You see, the fight starts out with Rom being somewhat passive, and once you hit her, she will spawn her baby spiders around her, while she keeps moving away from you. These baby spiders are the worst, as their heads are more solid than Wolverine's ass cheeks, and they hit hard as hell. 2 hits from these guys are enough to kill you. Now you can either choose to kill them and then focus on Rom, but to be honest, that makes the fight so much longer, so most people will ignore them and attack Rom. And then after this, she disappears and spawns somewhere else in the arena, which will then even spawn more baby spiders. The only difference is that now she has more attacks up her arsenal, like the meteors and various AoEs. She does this for one last time, and yeah, that's basically the fight. It's just you with a bunch of spiders trying to squeeze in a few hits on Rom. Now I know you might be saying, just kill the spiders. Trust me, even if you do that, the fight is still miserable, and even if the other guy helps, it still doesn't make the fight any better. So yeah, Rom sucks ass. End of story. The Witches of Hemwick is another boring fight that doesn't provide any cool visuals, and the flow of the battle, if you can even call it that, is pretty boring. You see, all you have to do is avoid the madman and wait for the witches to reveal themselves, attack, rinse and repeat until they're both dead, and you know, that's it. Yeah, it's just pretty lame. I love when Soulsborne and Souls-like pair a skinny boss with a fat ass one and calls it a day. Most times this can be done right, all you have to do is make them complement each other. Maybe one is significantly slower than the other, or they take turns to attack. The Godskin duo don't give a shit about complementing each other. They're both fast as hell and they pretty much shoot fireballs at you at the same time if you're trying to heal. And because of this, it makes the fight feel so frustrating at times. Plus they respawn and they have a pretty decent amount of health, so you're gonna be here for a while. My least favorite one to fight is the Noble, as his damage seems to be way higher compared to the Apostle and his range is crazy. His worst attack is when he decides to roll all over the place. Sure, he can stand on the pillar to avoid this, but it's just a waste of time, so you have to wait until he stops rolling, then you can attack him again. But here's the thing, as bad as the fight is, it's at least not as bad to the one that I'm gonna mention next, at least in terms of presentation. Royal Rat Vanguard. I can bet the devs were like, you know what would be fun? Filling the room with a bunch of rats and you have to fight all of them until the main one comes out. That's gotta be fun, right? No, that's just terrible. Like, come on, what's so fun about fighting some annoying ass rats that can stun lock you? It's not a super engaging or memorable type of boss. I mean, you're literally just fighting rats. That's just lame as hell. Now, before I move on, let me just say something because I feel like someone might point it out soon. My favorite type of bosses are cool blade-wielding humanoids, whether they're just baddies or cool-ass dudes. It doesn't matter. FromSoft usually design these bosses really well in terms of mechanics and visuals. I'm bringing this up to say that I obviously have a bias or a preference when it comes down to bosses I like, but that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy other boss types. For example, beast bosses are really cool as well, and I'm not against gimmick fights if they're done right. But what I'm trying to say is that at least make the boss fight fun in terms of combat flow. I don't know, I just feel like a bunch of rats just doesn't make a fun fight. At least the way they're done here. But hey, it's up to the devs to make what they want, but again, the fight is just really lame and that's why I placed it here. Yes, even above the Godskin duo. At number 4 we have the Grave Robbers. These guys are an absolute disgrace of a fight. I don't even think they deserve to be called a boss fight. Miss Noble has more aura than them, yet he's 10 times easier. Now the main issue with these guys is that they keep chasing you, barely giving you any breathing room, and it's an NPC fight. Of course it's not fun. Sure, as regular enemies there can be some enjoyment there, but as bosses it feels a bit lazy. So having 3 NPCs in a crypt or wherever the hell you're fighting them isn't really super fun, just really lame. At third place we have the Folding Screen Monkeys. I know there's just gonna be that one guy that says something like, "My dear friend, you're gravely mistaken. The Folding Screen Monkeys rank amongst the finest bosses in the entire series. The brilliance lies in deciphering their movements, each embodying the symbolic expressions of hear no evil, see no evil, and speak no evil. Of course you wouldn't get that. It's a masterful design, and to overlook its ingenuity is to miss a work of art entirely." Yeah, alright bro, I just want to bash some skulls in bro, it ain't that deep. But all jokes aside, I can commend FromSoft for trying something new. But new doesn't always mean good, and the Folding Screen Monkeys in my opinion halts the fun pace of the game. Now if you do enjoy this fight genuinely, like that's good, honestly good for you. But for me it's just so boring, even if you know the patterns. But like come on bro, let's be honest, who has this boss in their top 10? Now if you genuinely do have this boss in your top 10, just leave a comment below and tell me why, I guess. But yeah, for me it's just pretty boring. Molash. Oh brother, I hate this guy, man. I hate his smile, I hate the weird mating calls he makes, and I hate chasing his bitch ass all over the arena. But who thought this would be a good idea? It's so bad. His movement is annoying as hell, like the Call Beyond move, which can pretty much one-shot you. At least you can stagger him out of the animation if you shoot him, which is something I didn't know until recently. But yeah, I don't have anything else to say. If you play Bloodborne, then you already know why he's here. I'm not even gonna waste my breath on him. Let's move on. And at the number 1 spot we have Slave Knight Gale, just playing its bed of bullshit. If you want to know what the definition of insanity is, then fight this thing. It's the worst design boss in Souls history. I mean, the visual design is cool I guess, the lore is also interesting too, but the fight itself is genuinely awful. Challenging and fun? Yeah, the fun parts get thrown out the window for this shit. The ground is crumbling, it can swat you like a fly at any time, causing you to fall into the abyss, and after defeating the things on both sides, you have to now make a stupid platforming jump in the middle, which a lot of people will miss on their first couple tries. And even if you make it, don't celebrate yet, as this thing can still slap you off the ledge pretty easily. Oh, and don't let me get started on the run back. It literally takes around 2 minutes to reach the boss again. FromSoft, I love y'all, but what made y'all think this was a good idea? It's genuinely a shit stain of a fight. This thing makes the Godskin duo encounter look like a masterpiece. Anyways, this fight sucks ass, and yeah, I'm mad now, so thank you for watching this video and have a good rest of your day. That's it.